So I just realized that this is probably the best time to show off an outfit that I think that is cute without spending money. So it's what I'm wearing today. Um, I hope this goes together. I'm not a fashionista. I'm just sorry. I'm trying to get this. I'm no fashion expert. I just combine what I think looks alright, and sometimes it looks the contrast is too much. So, and there's certain clothing articles that I have that I haven't worn, so I try to combine them with other stuff. So I got this, it is both green and green, so hopefully this looks right. But anyway, so, I thought I would, since, even though I wasn't sure if I want to do this or not, because I hadn't read a lot this month, or, not this month, not, as in July. I didn't read a lot in July because it was SuperCon month, and not, SuperCon was a whole month. That would be awesome if it was a whole month. But, the third week in the month was SuperCon, and then my friend came in town the second week of July. So my reading was kind of off, and I was trying to get as many books as I could done. And unfortunately, that means I was only able to get done 2 books in the month. And actually, I just realized, so really I think that makes I've only read 2 books this month, technically, because the third one I picked out, let me just check, because I do have a document of books I read. Sorry if I disappear. Okay, let's see. Library, reading records, so that's in the R's. The good news is this is in alphabetical order. I'm trying to, I think, oh, here it is. Let me see, did I read more than 2 books? Because the other book that I have here that I said I read this month is one that I actually finished a few days ago. So technically it would have been in August, and no, I am not doing that. I am not doing that. That was a mistake. Okay, yeah, so really, sadly, I only finished 2 books this month. And like I said, one of them was a book that I actually finished in August, but I'm going to count it for July. And no, I can't reach them. They're too far away because I have a whole pile of books for either this video or another video right here. Okay, so the books the books that I actually read this month and I finished I keep saying this month, it's technically August, so I can't really say that this month. But the books I read in July, the ones I finished, were Daughter of the Forest by Julian Marillier. And this is one I actually started in June. My problem with these size books is it takes me a month at the shortest, and at the longest 2 months, and mostly I'm more the longest. Now if it's over 1,000 pages, then that might take me a whole year. As I've said in past videos, with books like this, sometimes if it's not adventurous and fast paced, and I'm not eager to find out what happens next, right in that moment, then it will take me longer. As much as I love the book It by Stephen King, and as great as it is, and I know the story and I've already read it once, it still will take me a while because it's not always thrilling all the time or always scary sometimes, because Stephen King likes to give you background of the characters, which is not a bad thing. It takes me longer to read that book, and Stephen King writes a lot. He writes over 1,000 pages. I've gotten the one book I got from the library. I had to keep rechecking it out. But the good news is that didn't take me as long. I was able to finish that quick. And that was the Dark Half, the one with the the writer who kind of has a dual personality. Like he creates a character, a pseudonym for himself, and that pseudonym creates a character that's very dangerous, and that character comes to life, and the original guy wants to, like, because of how it affects his family, him and his wife and his kid. I think he had a kid. I can't remember if he had. No, actually, I think it was just him and his wife. I don't remember, but it kind of affects his marriage. So he decides to kill off the character and get rid of him. But then the character, like I said, comes to life and decides to kill everybody involved in this decision to kill off the character, and then eventually goes after him, and But anyway, but this was such a great book. I finished this in the first week of July, so no, it does not take me a week to read a book this length. First or second week in July, I can't remember. But it was, so technically you could say I read this in June, actually. But this was really great. It's a retelling of the Six Swans story, about this girl whose six brothers get turned into swans, and she's supposed to make these special shirts for them made out of stalwart, which is it's a thread that can poke you and make you bleed and stuff, and she has to be mute. She can't talk to anyone or say anything while she's making these shirts, and she has to put them on her brothers herself. She has to do everything herself. And in this story, we have that part, but we also have a plot where her family's kingdom has been fighting another kingdom, the kingdom of Britain, and this is the kingdom of the Seven Waters, which is supposed to be representative of, I think, Ireland. And they have been at war with these people and this kingdom, and then the woman who turns her brothers is a witch that her father married, and this witch has put their father under a spell, and does the same thing to one of her brothers too before she turns him to a swan. So, but eventually, like, when our main character, Sorsha, is traveling, she gets captured by people from the enemy kingdom and has been taken there by the Lord, the Lord of the house of the kingdom, and he suspects that she knows something about his missing brother, and she does, because she met his brother, who was captured and held prisoner by her father's guards. And she healed him, because she's also a healer, but then he like, when she was forced to go back and to meet her new mommy, the guy, because he couldn't handle being alone anymore, because he was going through PSTD, he takes off, and and he's somewhere out there in the wilderness, and he had left her with a little token, which is what his older brother, the Lord of the other kingdom, recognizes. So he won't let her. She is staying in his manor house or castle, whatever, until he finds out what happened to his brother. But of course, she can't talk. So the only way, she will never leave and be able to give him the information he wants until she makes the sweaters for her brothers. So this was, it has adventure. It has some darker elements, like Sorsha gets raped, and it's, has magic, and then, of course, it has a little bit of romance, which I do like, which I love, because, as I've said multiple times, I like romance in my fantasy stories. And this was such a great fun. If you're a lover of fantasy, then I definitely recommend checking this out. It was a fun little story, and I'm glad I read it. And then the next book that I actually finished in July, was The Raven King. I finally finished the Raven Cycle series, although there is the ebook Opal, which is about, I can't remember which character. I figured out who the character was. Oh, that's right. I think it was the little girl that, okay, what of the characters, Ronan, okay, well, first let me explain, this series, I can't tell you what happens in this book, but this series is about this girl Blue, who all the women in her family are psychic, but she's not psychic, but she does have the power to amplify other people's powers. And she has been told her whole life by her mom and her aunts that she must stay away from Raven boys, the boys that go to the prep school in town, and if she kisses her true love, she'll kill him. But before I know that people are starting to not like romance as much. They want to read more stories where more YA books where a romance isn't in the plot, where a girl can be friends with guys without romance. The romance does not take central. There is romance, but it's not a central plot point. Like the whole idea of her kissing her true love and killing him, it's there. It's part of the story, and it's there in the shadows of the story, but it's not the main plot point. I mean, you do have the typical drama of young romance, young love, but it's not like, it doesn't dominate the plot, at least to me anyway. So she does, of course, Blue, her name's Blue, of course she meets the Raven boys, a group of Raven boys at the little cafe that she works at, because both the people from her side of town and the people from the Raven boys side of town go to this cafe to hang out. All the kids from both sides of the tracks. And she runs in, and you have Ronan, first you have their fearless leader, Gansey, or Richard Gansey III, but they call him Gansey. You have his friend Ronan, who is one of those, he's like the trouble teen, he's the rebel of the group, always causing trouble, rarely shows up to class. It's just him and his brothers, his older brother and his younger brother. Their dad just died, I think, in the beginning of the story. And then you have Adam, who's like the kid from the wrong side of the tracks, an abusive father. He's, a scholarship kid. And then you have Noah, who's kind of the quiet one, the one who tries to get, he's the peacekeeper of the group. He's much more shy, and he just kind of tags along with the group. And Gansey is trying to, he has been looking for this famous Welsh king, Glendower, because it is foretold that whoever wakes up Glendower will be granted a wish. So he with Ronan, Adam, and Noah are searching for this king. And then Blue, reading, after Gansey accidentally leaves his little planner where he talks about this whole thing, Blue finds it and reads about it and decides that she wants to help them out. She's very interested in this search of theirs. So she teams up with them. And like I said, there is a bit of romance. Like at first she's with Adam. Adam kind of has a bit of a crush on her and likes her, and they go out for a while. But then she is kind of drawn to Gansey. So there's that little love triangle thing going on, which I know a lot of people don't like that. But don't knock it until you check it out first. Don't dismiss the book just because it has those elements. Because there are a lot of good books that have the young tropes, that people don't always like, but they're still really great books. And then what I was about to tell you is the character of Opal Ronan is, you find out that Ronan has the ability to bring, he can go into dreams, and then he can bring things out of dreams. He has this special gift. And Opal, I believe, is a character that he brought out of one of his dreams. But throughout the rest of the series, throughout books 2, 3, and 4, this last book, she doesn't have a name. Well, actually, she gets a name in this book at the climax of this book, I believe. But so I think that's Opal. I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but I think Opal is that character. But this is such a great series. Like I said, before you dismiss it because it has some tropes that you don't like, it's so great. It's so well written. It's beautifully written. And it's full of a lot of magical realism. It takes place in our world. In fact, it takes place in a state where it actually takes place in a state that I've spent a lot of time in. And well, part of the state and that is Virginia. It takes place in Virginia. And I don't live there, but my sister lives there, so I've spent a lot of time. And I live in one of the states next to Virginia, so. In Virginia, I feel like it's almost like I have lived in Virginia, but technically I have not. And it's such a beautiful and fascinating story. It might be a little confusing at times, and I know not everybody can and some people might not like it, but don't dismiss it just because of the tropes. Dismiss it because you started to read it and you just can't get into it. The characters are all fascinating and just seem so real and genuine and just individual, and they don't seem like, I don't know, when I read books, oftentimes, especially in YA, because I still read YA books, the characters just seem, they seem like YA characters, But when I read this book, the characters felt, and maybe it was also the writing style, but the characters felt real, like they are people I could see in the real world. And like I said, there are 4 books, although again, there's that ebook, Opal, if you're interested in that. I don't know if I'll ever get around to it, because first I have to get a gift card again. And it's just so much easier for me to spend my money at the bookstore, at, the physical bookstore. But the problem is, if it's a Barnes & Noble, my Nook, the funny thing is my Nook, where my e-reader is a Nook, which is the Barnes & Noble e-reader. And you would think it would be easier for me, but, the problem is that, when I finally got around to using it, we were already close to the store anyway, so, and I can also order online, so, and I do believe I heard recently that there was another book that she was writing about the female characters of this world, unless that person was just talking about Opal. But anyway, this is great. Now the last book I want to talk about that I didn't actually finish in July, but I read mostly in July, which is not exactly fair because I mostly read this one in June, I think. So so if I'm talking about a book that I read mostly in July, a book and I'm talking about for my July, but I finished in August, well, I guess it doesn't really matter because I can do whatever I want. Well, almost whatever I want. There are things you can't really do, but, so yes, I finished this technically in August, but I read it in July, and that is mostly in July, and that is Mistborn: The Final Empire. I finally read the first book in the Mistborn series. I finally read a Brandon Sanderson book. I keep hearing about him, and I still have not gotten around to reading this book until now, and I'm so glad I did. This was such a great book. It's the first book in a trilogy, and the author, Brandon Sanderson, did write another set of books that are set in the same world, but it's like the second era. That's what he refers to it as. Okay, so this is a world taken over by this tyrant High Lord. They call him the Lord Ruler. And he has repressed the people, the common people of this world, who are called the Ska. And there's this whole magic system where, people that are called elementals who via metals, they have certain powers and abilities. And you have this group of, they're pretty close to nobility. They're not exactly nobles, but they're close to it. Led by Kelsier, one of our main characters, who has decided he wants to help the Ska and get revenge on the Lord Ruler. Because, he has, even though he's not a Ska, he has suffered as well under the Lord Ruler. So he works with a bunch of thieves, and has this whole plan to start a house war between all the noble houses, and just to make the Lord Ruler weak, but not to, to basically start the war, but not to actually finish the war. And he is also what is known as a Mistborn, hence the title. He is someone who can control more than one metal, and most people can only control one metal, but he can control lots of metals. And he comes across Vin, who's a Ska, and realizes that she is like him, a Mistborn. And she decides to get him, he decides to invite her to join his crew. And of course, Vin has some trust issues, so she's not sure if she wants to join, but she joins because she wants to get rid of the Lord Ruler as well, even though she doesn't think it will work. And her mission in this is to infiltrate the nobles. She's the only female of the group, so she is able to disguise herself as a noble's niece and go to all the balls and all the functions and gather information, gather intel. So and there is a little bit of romance in there. There is romance in this book as well. But like Daughter of the Forest, the romance doesn't come until kind of later in the book. This was, like I said, I'm so glad I read this. It was so great, and I can't wait to read the next book. It was such a fun book. I love the magic system with the whole swallowing metals, and that gives you special kinds of powers. And the characters were so good and interesting to me. And I definitely had all these feels about each of the characters. Like, sometimes I loved them, sometimes I was completely frustrated with them. But this was just, it was a great book. And I'm not very good at reviews, in all honesty. I'm just not good at them. I mean, I'm not good with analyzing books, which is funny because I like analyzing things, but it's a lot easier for me to analyze a TV show and a movie rather than a book. Because then I have to go through it and mark it up. And okay, so those are the 3 books I read this month. Let's see, how much... Okay, well, I can't do the other thing I was going to do in this video. But what I can do for this video is I'm going to mention... So I've talked about where is it? There they are. How I'm taking a class now this month just for fun, because I've already done the whole, oh dang it, folded it over, just for fun, because, I figured it would help me meet people closer to my age, because most people I work with are either in high school or they're old people. So I'm kind of, and I also like going to, I like learning things. I like going to school. I'm very nerdy in that, I actually like, unless it's like math or science, I actually like learning things and sitting in a classroom and learning, as long as it's not super early. So let me read the book. I'm not talking to you. 1 second.
Anybody call?
No. I didn't hear it ring or anything. Yeah, I'm not going to throw it to you.
You need an email.
No. This thing could actually break. Okay. Oh, dang it. Sorry about that. My dad was outside and he was seeing if anyone... I was listening out for if anyone called on his phone. So, real quick, let me just do, before I end this video, like I said, I am taking a British literature class. And I'm going to show you the books that were assigned to us to read, which I gotta check on the website and see if I got any emails, if I was supposed to start any of these books, although basically it's too late now. But, I'm kind of apprehensive about this, because these are books that are much older and a little more challenging for reading purposes. But, The good news is because we're reading them in a class, so maybe that will help. So, first, Hamlet. One of the books I have to read is that we're gonna read is Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet, which, from what I know, it's like this guy who his dad died, and he sees the ghost of his ghost, and is told to kill his uncle because his uncle was having an affair with his mom, I believe. I don't know if that's right or not, but I do believe that Lion King is partially, at least, the basic premise of Lion King is based on Hamlet, not with the whole mom and the uncle having the affair, because they couldn't put that in a Disney movie meant for kids. So that's, I've always known, who doesn't know about the Shakespeare stories? I mean, there's some famous ones that everybody knows the plot, or knows something about the plot, so. And then, I also, Gulliver's Travels, which I have not seen the original miniseries, but I did see the Jack Black movie, and people did not like it. I thought it was cute. I didn't hate it, but I know a lot of people were not pleased with it. They thought it was silly, but it's Jack Black. He's the main, he plays Gulliver, so of course it's gonna be silly. But, and also it couldn't be as long. But it's like this guy, he goes on this epic adventure. Like, he meets these little people called the Lilliputians, I think. And I think he also spends time with giants too, or he becomes the little person or something. So this is one of the books we're assigned to. And as you can see, these are used copies because my mom didn't want me to spend the money unless I really enjoyed the books. And who knows, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But yeah, so we're gonna read this one as well. And then here's another very challenging one. And now the funny thing is about this one is I actually had this particular book, and I had a translated version of one that had a translated version of it and the original text as well. But then I got rid of it thinking, oh, I'm never gonna read this book. It's too difficult for me. And turns out it's one of the books we were assigned, and that is Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Gulliver's Travels is by Jonathan Swift, in case you're curious. And this is basically, from what I know, it's a group of people telling stories of adventure, and that's basically what it's all about, is them telling all these stories, like kind of like Are You Afraid of the Dark, except for they're not horror stories. But it kind of the premise like Are You Afraid of the Dark, and it's kind of old English. Although I was looking through this and it didn't seem too hard. I mean, maybe I was just being paranoid. I don't know. Or maybe they edited, this one is an edited edition that is not as difficult. I mean, it is a Penguin classic, so I don't know how, when they print those classics, do they edit them a little bit so that they're easier to read for modern audiences? I don't know, but I'm very nervous about this, especially books like this. Shakespeare, I don't know. And then next is we're gonna read Beowulf by Seamus Heaney. Oh, it's a bilingual edition. This is like this guy Beowulf goes on this quest or this adventure or something, like, and my dad said he would think I would actually like it because of the plot, but I don't know. I mean, and maybe I would like the basic plot, it's just the writing makes me apprehensive and not interested. But now I have to read it for this class, so tell me, and it's a New York Times bestseller, but it's written in verse, I believe. Yeah, it's written in verse. Oh, dang it. Okay, good. So I want to say this is Scottish originally. I don't know, but so we're gonna read that one as well, and then the last one is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And this one is also a translated edition. I don't know much about this one. I never heard of this one. I mean, I think I might have heard of it, but I don't know what it's about. I'm guessing it's about these two knights teaming up. I don't know. It's one of these books that just has blurbs on the back, like so I don't this is also written in verse. They wrote a lot of books in verse back then. I don't know. Okay, so it looks like it's one of those ones where it has two versions. It has the original way it was written, and then it has a translated version. See, you can see it. So anyway, have any of you guys read any of those books? Have you, maybe you can put in the comment section if you have read them, what you thought of them, and reassure me that I shouldn't have anything to be nervous about. Okay, so if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and books keep falling. Be sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click subscribe. And I hope you all are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to all of you guys later.